to the Amy Edwards Show. I'm your host, Amy Edwards. We are here to find our best us. Make you the best you, make me the best me in the most efficient way possible through mindset shifts, better habits, and all the rest of it. And talking with all these amazing guests every single week. I'm so excited you're here. Thank you for being here. And I'm so excited to welcome Josh Holland today.
Thank you.
Josh, this is so exciting. And I'm just so excited. Again, a mutual friend connected us and I'm thrilled. Let me tell people just a little bit about you. And if I miss anything, please feel free to add it at the end because there's a lot. You are a fitness expert and you are the author of a new book called The Awareness Shift, which I love that title. The subtitle is Unearth the 5 Pillars for Optimal Health and Wellness. And so that right there just... it sounds clear. Anyway, I'm really excited to talk about that today. You're the host of Simply Walk the Talk podcast, and you lead trainers and health coaches at your gym in New York. And you also have a background in dance, martial arts. You're into biohacking, and you're a holistic health coach and a sports professional, correct?
Yeah.
And you are currently touring with Roger Waters and helping Roger, who is, I believe, 79 years old, correct?
79, yeah.
Like kill it up on stage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me. And,
thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's really cool. This is my first time in Austin, and
how is that possible?
I know. I'm actually from Oklahoma, and
what? Wow.
I've been to Texas so many times, and just somehow I've missed coming to Austin, and so I'm here for the first time. It's really exciting. I've already had like a few great days, and when going through the intro for me, like my background. When you said expert, one of the first things you said, the fitness expert, one of the first things that comes to mind is I kind of gravitate away from the word expert because I feel like we're all on this journey of trying to better ourselves day after day. And whether that's in our regular life or that's in our career or that's in our relationships with many other people, to be an expert means that we hit this final point. Or it's like we have
I've got it.
Yeah.
I've mastered it.
Or we have to specialize in like this one thing. And part of, the intro you gave me is that there's a multitude of things that I like to focus on and that I like to do and that I do for my work. And so we kind of lump it in this phrase called health optimization. And even that is a little bit weird to say because what does it truly mean to optimize our health and wellness?
Yeah.
I certainly want to try to help us all get there, but once we get to a certain point, we're still going somewhere, right?
Yeah, there's not like an end point exactly,
Right,
Right.
right.
I think about that with this show when I say helping us get to our best self. I'm like, what does that exist?
Right.
Like, no. But I also, there's this finding balance and happiness in the present moment that you're in and appreciating everything and gratitude. So it's like, almost like it is right now. I am at the best me right now.
Yes. In fact, I just had a great conversation with my best friend from Oklahoma. His name is Josh as well.
Well, that's convenient.
And we were literally talking about that last night. He was talking about how he's now into therapy and, speaking with someone about his feelings because growing up, especially men, we don't really talk a lot about our feelings. And now,
especially not in Oklahoma.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a very, conservative, it's, we're in the Bible Belt and, we're taught to kind of just suck it up and you're a man, be a man.
Yeah. Boys don't cry.
Yeah. Boys don't cry. Don't talk about your feelings. Like heaven forbid that we say we love each other, one man to another, or we hug each other, right? Like that.
I know, or kiss for that matter.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to talk about where he's at and where I am, he said, listen, all I can guarantee anyone is that I'm my best self right now. Right. Like this is kind of like day to day, today is I'm presenting as, my best self. And it is what it is, right? Like
yeah, and I've tried to give myself a lot of grace with past things that you might call mistakes and things like that, and just let them go a little bit and say I was doing my best, and it gives me more compassion toward everyone. And I start to think they're doing their best they can right now, which sometimes our best isn't that great. I mean, if we're looking at the scale of things. Decisions we could have made, but that's okay. You're still doing your best. And if you can find that space to say, oh, that version of Amy was doing her best at that time, then
That's right.
then it's easier to find that now.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Frankly, I think that's a little bit of an expert level there, Josh.
Well, I love the word compassion. So I think you hit it really well. And then the other thing is I like to try to present myself as the most authentic version of Josh right now. And so this is
You come across that way. Like you really do. Like because obviously we had like a ride in the car together today and everything.
Yeah.
And like immediately you were very open and authentic.
Thank you.
It's you can feel it when someone's like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a nice touch to be able to like spend some time with someone, ahead of a interview. And it's just like, I like to point out one of the first things that comes to mind when we talk about the book, The Awareness Shift, is I'm not a writer, but I am I'm someone that has a story. I feel like we all have stories, which is why we both have podcasts and why the podcasts are really, really trending right now. But I have a co-writer, Tessa Cash, who helped to write the book. So basically, we did this entire book. So when you hear me say we, I wanted to preface this, right? But we did this whole book basically over voice note.
Wow.
Yeah,
I've heard stories about that before.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I love to explain stories. I think stories are what graft our history, right?
Totally.
And that's where history comes from, is through story.
Yeah, and who's telling it.
Right, and who's telling it, exactly, right? From
the perspective.
Bingo. So I always like to put that out there, because when you read the book, you might go, wait a minute, Josh doesn't quite talk like that. But I do talk like that in a certain way. But Tessa did a really good job in kind of taking my voice and sort of molding it into this very well written. I think it's very well written. I can say that because I didn't write it, right? You know what I mean?
How'd you find her?
So she used to be a client of mine.
Oh, wow.
And that's actually the reason why we came across this awareness shift, if you will, because, and we explain it in the book, but very quickly, she was in New York, and a friend of mine, I guess it's a mutual friend of both of ours, he was like, hey, I know you've been looking at trying to like improve your fitness, and there's a number of things that you were interested in, and she was mostly interested in electrical muscle stimulation because she had heard about it, EMS, right? And I happen to be a guy that has been working in the EMS world for about a decade now.
Cool.
And my company has built out this new bodysuit, and we're sort of like, in the US, we're one of the companies that have been doing it the longest. And so,
wow.
Yeah. So he was like, my buddy Sean, excuse me, was like, hey, you should go meet Josh. So she goes, meets me. And when I meet her, I was in the midst of like having multiple sessions a day. I had about 6 to 8 sessions a day, which takes up a lot of time.
I'm guessing they're like 45 minutes or an hour each.
Well, I was doing about an hour,
Yeah.
which we can talk about that, which gets under my skin, because the business of fitness suggests that we all do things by the hour and by the half hour. But anyway, we can talk about that later.
Okay.
So yes, I was seeing each of these people for about an hour a day. So, that's most of my day. And when I get a client coming in, it's just like, okay, one client to the next. It's almost like the medical model in which doctors are forced to just see people 15 minutes at a time. And it's just high turnover, boom, 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 boom,
Just
boom.
cycling through.
Yeah. And when this beautiful being comes into my office, I could sense, because, even though I was very busy and, back-to-back sessions, I still have this capacity to assess people, their energy, how they walk, how they sit, like what their mood is like. And I didn't know her, but when I met her, I was like, okay, but she's here to see me to do EMS. So of course we take her through the protocols, trying to figure out like why it is that she wants to do it, or like why she feels she needs to do it. And anyway, long story short, it ended up not being the best session for her, right? Like she didn't, I guess maybe the way it was talked up, it sort of, her expectations were way up here. And when she left, it was right. And I didn't know this, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? I just sensed that like, okay, we gave her a good session. I gave her a little bit of my energy. She definitely liked my energy, and the session was okay, but she didn't leave like walking on clouds like most people
jazzed.
do. Yeah, you know? So I checked in with her like I normally do. And little did I know, she was dealing with a lot of sciatica pain and it flared up. So when I checked in on her like 2 days later, she told me like she had the biggest flare up ever, and she couldn't help but associate it with the EMS workout. So in my head, I immediately, it's almost like if I wasn't aware then, I'm much more aware now about the situation, but then I was just kind of flying by the seat of my pants and I immediately became defensive, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh,
like, it can't be that.
Well, it couldn't have been the EMS because we did this, and that. But that didn't matter. Like looking back on it now, that's not what mattered. There was a moment to really connect with this lovely being in front of me or on the phone at the moment, right? So that was when I had my first sort of shift. I was like, oh, I need to like care of this situation a little bit greater, right? Like I need to have more care around who she is and what happened, because maybe there was something, right?
Or if there was or wasn't, does it really matter if she perceives that it was?
Bingo.
Is that where we're going?
Bingo.
Okay.
So we booked another session and she says, listen, I thank you for doing EMS with me, but like I would like to try some of the other things in the studio, because we had a lot of other things like PMF and all kinds of stuff. Right?
Cool.
We can get into that too, but
I want to come. I'm going to be in New York next week, actually.
yeah. Well,
are you there? You're traveling.
We finish October 15th, so I'll be back shortly after that. But she comes in for the next appointment, and she bought a package of sessions, so it wasn't terrible, right? But when she's
in it though.
Yeah. So she arrives at the studio a little bit early because she's someone that likes to be early, which I can respect. But in the midst of my own world going, I see her sitting in the studio, like in the lobby area, and I'm like, why is she here so early? It stressed me out.
I know. I'm always hoping my
Right?
podcast guests don't arrive early. I'm like, please don't get here 15 minutes early. I'm
Right.
like, my hair's disheveled and like,
Yeah.
or whatever you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, that's not, I mean, her being early was for her, so she could balance herself. But I can say that now.
Yeah.
But in the moment, I treated it like, why is she here early? And like
Your own energy got off.
Yeah, like I wanted to go to the bathroom or whatever, Anyway, I finally say, hey, good to see you again. Said goodbye to the previous client. And as soon as I looked at her, it was like her eyes started tearing up. And I was like, whoa, like what happened? And again, I think, okay, she's not ready to go into one of the rooms where there's other people working out. Like we need to go into the middle room so we could have a sit down conversation, because not all of my sessions are 100% fitness, right? Like I do a multitude of things. And so
That's
if I see
the holistic approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we go into the room and she just breaks down crying. And I hadn't really built enough of a connection with her to just reach and give her a hug, but I had this feeling of wanting to do that, right? I wanted to just hug her because I could tell that she needed it. But there was something off in her situation, right? So I helped her through that, and we ended up helping her sciatica. We did a bunch of things, and she was better. She left on a much better situation than when she came in. That's what I want to leave everyone with, this opportunity of being better than you arrived, right?
Love that.
And from that point forward, she did, I think, a few more EMS sessions. We ended up becoming really good friends. We did a bunch of energy healing together. She's very spiritual. And that's what ended up ultimately leading to her writing for my website, doing some articles for me. And then we finally decided, like, during the pandemic, she moved to LA. I ended up being in LA with Madonna. And it was like, hey, if you're looking for work, because she was looking for work as a writer, I was like, why don't we like write a book? We have a really cool story. And we talked about those moments, and she was dealing with her own stuff. I was dealing with my own stuff. And then we decided to write a book.
So it came out of your own awareness shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did she also experience an awareness shift? I mean,
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I guess I was tuned more into yours than hers in that story, so
it's easy to do that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, really.
I'm hearing your story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you broke that down into like 5 pillars. Is that it?
Great question. So the story about Tessa and I is mostly as like, it's mostly to kind of bring up the answer to why did they write a book together, right? and that's sort of the preface, right? Or it's sort of the beginning, the intro to kind of everything else. Why is it these two? But the 5 pillars has been something I've been developing for a decade or more, because the 5 pillars revolve around my experience throughout the last 20 years of dealing with different clients and what do I see works best. Like, it used to be 4 pillars, which the most important thing I found myself talking about, let's say 20 years ago or 15 years ago, was sleep and recovery.
Big fan.
Right?
Big fan of sleep.
So I used to think that was the number one thing. If you can get your sleep and recovery down, then you're good to go, right? So that was pillar 1. And I would always use the qualifier, quality sleep and recovery. And then the pillar 2 back then was quality consumption. So the things you eat, things you drink, because a lot of people forget about the calories or the energy that comes from the things we drink. But then also, I like to include the energy around us, the people that we have in our orbit, the pollution, the environment, like all of these things are part of consumption because we're consuming it, whether we put it in our mouth, in our nose, in our, any of our orifices, right?
Screens in our eyeball holes.
Exactly. So that was quality consumption was pillar 2 back then. Pillar 3 was quality activeness. Like, instead of trying to figure out the rep scheme and the weights and the resistance and how many days a week, let's just talk about activeness. Let's talk about movement, right? Because I used to always think, and I still do, I think, what are the things we can do the most? Because I have this mantra, I love using this. I think it's in the book as well somewhere. It's called, so I wrote this, but our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. So if you use that as the foundation for everything I believe or everything that I work in, my sort of method with quotes, air quotes, then the things that we do most of the time have usually the biggest impact. So we usually sleep much greater, a bigger amount of time than we could ever exercise. Yeah. That's why sleep and recovery was number 1 back then.
Yes, I just read a quote like that the other day, and it was, I'm totally paraphrasing, but it really impacted me. But it was something like, we're not those things, those experiences that we have once in a while, those big things that we do once in a while. We are actually the little things that we do all the time.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So if you break it down like in a triage type of effect, sleep and recovery should be the thing we do the most. So we should really hone in on that. Then consumption, right? It's everything around us.
We're really doing it all the time.
We're doing it all the time. Some could argue that we do that more than sleep and recovery.
Yeah, I could see that.
But then activeness, we can do far greater. So you can go for a walk. I did a 32-mile walk around circumnavigating the island of Manhattan. It was about 10 hours in the rain. But
why'd you do it in the rain?
Well, I
only can do it today.
To do it in the rain, but it was this thing called a Great Saunter, and it's like this event. And I had a few clients with me and friends with me, and we did this walk. I thought it was going to be a piece of cake. It was not.
No.
But that I could do that for 10 hours. I could not do quality exercise for 10 hours, right?
Right.
So the final piece was quality exercise. Right. And then throughout, I'd say I was doing that for about 5 years. That was my thing. The 4 pillars for optimal health and wellness. Right. Whatever. And then when I met Tessa and I started to kind of understand what was really happening in real time, I thought there's something that kind of creeps up all the time. Like, I don't know how to put my finger on it. And then one day I was like, something that is far greater than any of those 4 pillars is quality awareness. To be aware is the thing we should be doing most of the time, all of the time.
It's almost like the foundation of the pillars.
Bingo.
Because you have to be aware of your sleep and aware of your movement and aware of your consumption.
Right. We have to be aware that we even need to make a change, or we have to be aware that we want to make a change. So awareness should be sort of this trickle down effect through all the pillars. So that became pillar number 1.
I love it.
And then pillar number 2, quality sleep and recovery, blah, blah, blah.
Are you ready to up-level your pleasure practice?
I have in mind. And one of the tools that I've used is from Wands. That's Waands. One of my favorite items that they have is the cervix wand. It is their #1 best-selling glass pleasure wand for vaginal and anal de-armoring. That means more sensation. That means more getting in touch with your body. It's designed for cervical and G-spot stimulation, and it has helped thousands of women become more connected to themselves and their own pleasure while supporting them to heal pelvic pain through self-yoni massage. So if you are curious about getting more in touch with yourself, then I have an offer for you. You can get a discount using my code Amy Edwards, but if you use the link in the show notes, you can get 20% off from Wands. They have so many other beautiful items to choose from, with a large selection of 100% pure crystal pleasure wands. They create the most gorgeous, luxurious products that encourage you to honor your body, celebrate your sexuality, and live in pleasure, which is a big part of what we're about on this show. And yes, I use one myself. So go today to wands.com, that's WAANDS, and use the code Amy Edwards for 10% off, or use my link in the show notes for 20% off of your purchase from Wands. Again, my favorite is the cervix wand. It is trademarked and it is amazing. Take it from me. Check it all out and the reviews on wands.com. That's WAANDS.com, and use my link in the show notes for 20% off. I want to talk more about that, but I'm going to ask you a question right now.
Please.
After doing all this and writing this book and spending time with Tessa, if another Tessa walked in to your place now with an appointment, how would you handle it? What shifted for you? What would be different?
I'll go back to what you said earlier, which is compassion.
Yeah.
Like I have a greater compassion for people that arrive, at a point in my life, in my orbit, because you never know why someone is there.
I mean, you never know about anything.
Yeah.
If we could just underscore that right now, like you just never know. Even if somebody cuts you off in traffic, right. Like maybe their mom just died. I mean, because I made a lot of stupid driving mistakes when my mom was dying. So right. I particularly always think of that. I'm like, right. maybe their mom's dying. You know right. what? You're okay. You're good. Yeah. But I mean, you just never know.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagine if we all had a bit more compassion. Yeah. Just imagine, right? Like, what would that world be like if we all had a bit more compassion?
I mean, just like 0.5%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like.
So I mean, I think to answer that question a little deeper, I ask better questions now.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's right. Especially in your field and what you're doing, you need to know those things, but it's given you just this awareness of like this whole person in front of you that has all this stuff going on.
That's right. Yeah. And to be fair, because I'm not an expert, I'm going to be using air quotes a lot, right? But because I'm not just...
So everyone watch this so
right.
you can see all the air quotes. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Please watch. Because I don't consider myself an expert in fitness, that allows me to gravitate and move around the world of fitness only, right? Like for a long time, I was known as this fitness guru. I mean, people were using guru. They were using, movement
Anytime
expert.
You're working with somebody like Madonna or something, I think you're going to get that label, right?
Right.
I mean.
But I always looked at that as being sort of put into a box or put into a cage, because I'm much more than someone who has learned how to, move the body. But I mean, we all, like, you can't patent movement, right? Mm-hmm. So, I'm an expert in what I do. I mean, I'm an expert in my experience, 100%. And I can explain my experience, till the cows come home, which is an expression, obviously. But right, like.
I know that expression.
Exactly. Yeah, of course. So, I'm an expert in that for sure. And this is the one thing I've always wanted to express, whether it's in a book or it's on a podcast or, it's just talking to someone on the street or whatever. It's like, I can give you my experience and then we can see how well that matches up with you. But like, if you really want to know what works best for you, you've got to do the work. I can be your guide, In fact, I didn't wear my shirt today that has my logo on it, but my personal logo, my brand logo is a labyrinth.
I saw it. I'm looking right now.
Yeah.
I want to pull it up.
And
yeah.
this labyrinth is sort of a symbol. It like symbolizes.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Thank you.
It looks like there's a bunch of J's and H's in there too.
And there is, right? And there's also, like, if you were to split that down the side and fold it over, it would be somewhat symmetrical, which could be like this mirroring, this reflective image. Also, the open X in the middle of the logo, of the symbol, is sort of like X marks the spot, because obviously, like, a labyrinth is similar to a maze, but it's about the journey along that walk, right? And labyrinths have been used for millennia, like to heal people or to allow them to kind of, go on their own journey, go on their own way. And it's more about appreciating that journey as opposed to getting to an endpoint.
Is that the point of a labyrinth?
Yeah, the point of a labyrinth, like, so maze.
Have you done much with them?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's almost like tending to your garden, like, what is I forget what they call it when, you make symbols in sand.
Yeah, like a mandala, but I don't know what it is. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
All of these things sort of represent this idea of a labyrinth. Like, normally a maze is like you try to find the one route to get out the fastest, but a labyrinth is designed to kind of keep you in, to keep you going. And my goal is to be the guide along our collective journey.
I love it.
And
yes.
and being a guide doesn't mean that I'm the expert, doesn't mean that I know it all. It's, hey, like, I want to shine a light, right? Let me help shine a light on whatever it is that we're going to be faced with. And if I can do that, then I've done my work. And this is why I love doing what I do.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that it goes way back with labyrinths. And then I saw on your website, it said ancestral health. So how does that fit together if you're looking at, like, the past for people and things like that?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Thanks.
Because, I mean, we all deal with trauma. I'm sure you know this.
Yes. And I think people can tend to sell themselves short on their own trauma sometimes. So I encourage everyone to say, even if you feel like they're like little T traumas, that's okay too. That counts.
It definitely counts. There's a really good book called The Body Keeps the Score.
I'm in the middle of reading it. It's going to probably take me forever, but
it took me a long time.
I really love it. Yeah. And I highly recommend it.
It's a really good book. And, it helped me to understand that no matter how little or great a trauma is, there is usually some kind of effect within the body. And this is exactly, I think I was reading that book around the time that I met Tessa, and this is why I was able to kind of show her something else than just this trainer that says do 100 burpees and pay me and go home. I'm like, have you done any kind of like energy healing work around what's happening? Because I know that our root chakra and our, like a lot of our pain and our trauma is held within our hips.
And it's tied to security.
Of course, right? And so at that time, I happened to be kind of going down that path, right? Speaking of labyrinth, right? But I happened to be going down that path. And so it was at the forefront of my brain. So I was able to, despite my being really busy, I was still able to kind of make the light go off in her brain. And she kind of like, wait, how does this guy know that I'm dealing with a bunch of things, right? She had a bunch of trauma that she was going through and probably still is going through. But when we were able to kind of work through it, things got better. So talking about ancestral wisdom, it's basically using the past to kind of give us some insight on what we could do, right? Because if we truly understand that we're energetic beings, like just a bunch of cells vibrating around at a certain frequency. And if you believe that, right, or if you feel into that, then
I think it's just true.
Right. I do as well.
Yeah.
I do as well. What ends up happening is when we step away from nature, when we step away from the primitive, when we step away from our ancestral wisdom, then we go, but yeah, that's not quite me because, my name is Josh. I live in New York City. I have an apartment. But no, at the end of the day, we're still just a bunch of cells vibrating around at a certain frequency. So if you want to enhance that, you want to make it better, we got to understand it from a cellular perspective, right? From a very ancient perspective, which is the cell, right? And so all of our cells communicate with us, right? And we communicate with the environment communicates with us, back and forth. And the farther we separate ourselves from nature and from the primitive, I think the worse off we are. And it's like, sometimes the worst things can be described as beastly or wild, right? But that's a part of us. That's who we are, right?
That could be, interpreted completely differently.
Right.
You're training people in New York City, though. Like, if this is a big part of it, what do you tell these people to do? Because, I guess they could get in nature just in the air,
See, now we're getting into the root of it. Everything I do is sort of by design, because I always want people to ask questions. And remember, I said I ask better questions.
Yeah.
And this is what brings up an amazing conversation. And I always say, I have a lot of little mantras and analogies that
Great, I love those.
But I say any question is an opportunity to educate, right? And doesn't mean that one person knows more than the other, or one is teaching teaching the other person or whatever. But I love to bring about questions, because then it directs us, right? That's the path. Now we're going down this path of what you just asked me. So like what I bring about when we talk about big cities and urban environments is, let's find ways to make it as close to nature as possible. So one of the first things I always like to talk about is the light environment, right? Light is energy. Light, without the sun, we would all be screwed. The plants, the environment, us. We need the sun. Right?
How many sci-fi movies are like, they killed the sun,
Right,
or the
right.
sky is all black, basically.
Right. So like, that's one of the first things I talk about is, of course we go over the pillars, right? So, but when we get to, I think, the meat and potatoes of it, it's, what is your light like in your home, right? For me, if you want to go as far as I do, I make sure that the lights in my house or in my apartment matches similar to what's outside. So as it gets dark outside, I can change. I have the hue light system that you can change the color. And so I change it to a more dusk, sort of reddish orange, closer to nighttime. And then, of course, I have blue blocker lenses and things like that when I'm around a bunch of electronics and artificial light. But like, this is one way to mimic nature in your home environment. Another thing I look at is, are you wearing shoes inside of your home, right? Like, why? Like, it
never feels right to me.
Right. Me either. Like, when I stepped in.
I remember when I was little, and it used to bug me when people had shoes on around the house, and I'd be just like, it would put me on edge a little bit almost. And I'd be like, take your shoes off.
Well, especially in New York City, right? Like,
yeah.
Walking around, stepping in God knows what, and then bringing that into the house, right?
No. I made the mistake of wearing pink Ugg boots on the subway once in New York. And
Lovely.
They were ruined. Yeah.
Lovely, I'm sure. Yeah. So like, we live in homes that are grounded, right? Or insulated, I should say. They're insulated, but then we have this grounding ports throughout, because if we didn't have grounding ports, then there would be far too much positive ions, electricity coming through that is just too erratic. So that ground helps to settle. So that's why you see, especially here in America, you see the two prongs, and then the third one in the middle, that's the grounding port. And so we have to connect to that if we want to be grounded as much as possible, because our ancestors were always grounded. They were mostly barefoot, and even if they weren't barefoot, they were always connected to something that was grounded, right? This neutral sort of negative charge that gives us a positive effect that helps balance out the charges.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people don't understand that when we have pain in our body, we have inflammation, our cells are usually more positively charged. And the best way to kind of neutralize that or balance it out is to introduce this negative charge. But it's negative in the sense that it's, the polarization.
It is not charged.
Right? But exactly, right?
Yeah. I know that's what like sage does and these other things. They take out the positively charged ions in the air, particles in the air, which when I studied that, I was like, wait, what? But yeah, that's exactly it.
And what's cool about that is that you believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't,
right.
it doesn't really matter. Like, you know, some people will ask me, again, goes back
I
to,
mostly believe that. I mean, like,
right.
yeah.
It goes back to that point about I'm an expert in my experience, you know, like, well, my experience is that sage and Palo Santo and all these things are amazing.
Yeah.
Because I want it to be. It's also like going to a restaurant and hearing that this is the most amazing restaurant in the world, and your meal wasn't quite as good because you had a bad day, maybe, or because you didn't like your company, right? I mean, that would be your experience, right? But
Right.
if you go into it thinking like, this is going to be amazing, this is made with love, I'm going to introduce this into my body, you know, savoring every chew, every flavor, right? Then it's going to be an amazing meal.
Yes. Although I have trouble liking it too if it doesn't have good lighting in there. So, you know, whatever. I'm a lighting freak. Anyway, I like your approach to ancestral. I think that word always off-puts me just a little bit because I don't really feel connected to my ancestors. I hear about people, you know, that feel so connected to it and all this. And I don't know much about my family history. Most everyone has passed already. My sister and I are pretty much, I think I have one uncle, but I'm not close to him. And so I don't know much. I don't even know where I would find much. And I just don't feel that connected to it. And I've done some work, you know, but I don't know. I think I get very much about present now. And so I don't delve into that too much. But I liked your approach of just thinking of it in a broader stroke and thinking about humans as my ancestors, thinking about way back when and where we came from and how we used to live. And that kind of reframes it in a way that is way more approachable for me.
Well said. Well said.
Oh, thanks.
The first thing that came up when you were explaining that just now, the first thing that came up is try 5 grams of psilocybin. Blindfolded with headphones.
Yeah,
you know?
Blindfolded with headphones. I need
Yeah.
to do that. Yeah, I've done it alone, or at least a hero dose of like what was it, penis envy or something. So yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that is because I'm fairly new to the psychedelic world, but I had the great fortune of being able to do a week of several different psychedelic compounds, and it was the first time that I ever connected truthfully to my ancestors, my ancestral line.
Cool.
Wow, it was very, very, very transformative.
Yeah.
And I think that also, what's interesting and ironic about that is I did that retreat. It was a weekly retreat, 1 week retreat. I did that 2 weeks after Tessa and I finalized the manuscript for the awareness shift, right?
Oh man.
When I finished that retreat, I was sat there and I thought, oh my goodness, we have to rewrite this whole
the
thing.
book. I was going to ask.
Because I just had my awareness shift, right? Well, here's a great story that there's only been one other podcast I've talked about this, right?
Okay.
So Tessa and I, we got our book published by this book publisher. Our launch date was June 28th, 2022. And we did it, right? We got the manuscript finished. I thought, we got to rewrite a bunch because I now know all these different things.
When was the psychedelic week?
That was, I think it was like the end of May.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but like we had already sent books to our...
sure. It's done at that point.
Yeah. Our pre-orders and things like that.
Yeah.
And we both just decided, no, it's fine. Let's just let it go, right? We got to the book launch date. Great. I have books in my hand. I'm excited. We're June 28th. It's launched, right? June 29th, Tessa and I both woke up to an email from the book publisher saying that they've gone bankrupt.
The next day?
The next day. So
So what does that even mean for your book?
Great question. And again, it goes back to what I was saying. Like I thought we needed to rewrite the book and add all these experiences that I just had.
Oh, shit.
Right? Well, if the book publisher goes bankrupt, now you have the option of working with another book publisher, hopefully, or you go into self-publishing. Well, what else does that do? So we decided to do self-publishing, and what that allows for is the opportunity to make any edits along the way. So we've made edits. And so I think as of right now, I think the revised version is going to be available in a couple of weeks.
Cool.
So it should be, by the time this comes out, it should be out. So we made a few changes in there, added some things in. And now we were like, oh, this was meant to happen. Like there were some things that were missing in the book that we really wanted to put in, but we had to meet this deadline. And it was our first book together, right? So like we didn't really know, I guess deadlines are a thing. They are, right? But now we understand, this is why they were pushing so hard to hit that deadline, because they needed to be able to say, hey guys, we're done. This was the last one.
Yeah.
And so it's been a beautiful journey yet again. You know, we've exchanged a lot of pain, like having to dive back in to like rewrite it and have to reread everything. And, you know, but here we are.
It's just interesting that you were like, oh gosh, I need to make changes in the book. And the universe was like, okay, here you go.
Yeah. Here you go. Here you go. Be careful what you ask for.
Oh, I am hugely into that.
Yeah.
Well, so you said that, just backing up a little bit, you said that the psychedelic week was very transformative for you. Yes. So what transformed for you? Because you'd already had a lot of transformations, and probably, you know, even being there was like, you're a new you to even say yes to something like that.
Well said. Yeah. I mean, first of all, a lot of things changed, but one of the biggest things was experiencing true ego death.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
And
what else did you do there? Just mushrooms or?
So we did.
Excuse me.
I'll have to remember. We did MDMA, ketamine.
Bufo?
No,
5-MeO DMT?
We didn't do Bufo. Oh no, we did DMT. We did DMT. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this was all guided by like doctors and chemists and, you know, guides and shamans and stuff. And it was amazing. It's all about the proper set and setting. Sure. That is 100% like it's a must, right? You have to be in the right set and setting. Ketamine, DMT, MDMA, and then I think like Euthalone, and then we finished with psilocybin 5 grams. And that was the first time I did that, right? Like almost everything there was the first time for me. So I was the newbie.
Wow.
But I thought, like you said, I thought that like, oh no, but I'm very evolved and you know, I've been doing breath work and meditation and I do all these things.
Yeah, you do. And breath work can be very powerful.
Ooh, like first of all, the first 2 days was set up in a beautiful way. Like, you know, MDMA is very heart opening and it's a really good way to kind of set people up, right? To kind of, you know, get them out of their own way. This. Yeah. And then I think everything for me was great, but the psilocybin, the 5 grams psilocybin I liken it to a video game, and you have to master different stages. And I felt like each stage was kind of the up and the down. You know, it'd be like, you know, very happy and beautiful and vibrant colors, and then it would be very dark. And I remember, you know, our guide, one of the things that stuck with me was just let go. Like you will have a much better experience if you just let go. And if you see anything that's very dark and scary, dive into it instead of trying to run from it. And that stuck with me. And I remember thinking like all the previous days, like being in this really happy space and like everything's gonna be fine. I experienced that in the beginning with psilocybin. I like dove in. I couldn't wait to get my headphones on and my sleep mask on, and I'm just like laying there in my own room, and you know, it was all great. And then next thing you know, I'm in the underworld and I'm just looking at like serpents crawling around and all of these things, and it was really dark and gray and very monotone. And I remember there was this point in which this snake comes at me and opens its mouth and it's slithering its tongue. And I remembered what the guy told me. Don't be afraid. Let go. Dive into it. And I remember literally like my energetic being diving in, and I go all the way through and come out the back end of the serpent. And it's like I got thrust straight up, right? There's a lot of symbolism in the up and the down, right? And I got shot straight up with rainbows all around me. And it was like, you know, and I just felt like, whoa, that was amazing. Like, what happens if you dive in to our fears sometimes. If we, there's a lot of messages that can
Yes.
be deciphered from that.
Yes.
But I learned that the things that we stress about on a daily basis is so irrelevant, really. I mean, we make our day, like, what someone said to us, our fight or flight response kicks in, right? Our sympathetic nervous system kicks in over something so minuscule. But like, if you really think about it, we're just a speck in this universe. And like, who cares what, someone cut in front of you on the road, right? Like you said, maybe their mother passed away, or maybe they're on their own journey.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe they need to be awakened, right? Like, and so if you kind of can get rid of the ego has its place. But if you can learn to let that go, then what you're left with is true beauty, because we are nature. And this is what I was saying back. This is a callback to what I was saying previously. I feel like more and more in today's society, we're getting farther away from nature, but we are nature.
Yes.
And this is what I understood once I was, dealing with the plants.
We are nature. You are correct. That's right. And so getting in touch with ourselves is getting in touch with nature.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. How has that carried? I mean, that was recent.
Yeah, that
We were
was
doing all this.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
recent. And people ask me, like, because I'm a big cannabis advocate, and I do a lot with cannabis, but with intention, right? And throughout that, I even learned to be more intentional with cannabis.
Good.
And
I've interviewed Ryan Sprague, who's a cannabis coach. Have you heard of him?
yeah, of course.
Yeah, Shaker connected
Yes,
us.
of
Yes.
course.
Have you had him on your show?
Highly optimized, right?
Yeah. Have you had him on your show?
Not yet.
You must.
He
You
and
must.
I both, in fact, I met him right around the time that I did the journey. In fact, I met him right before then I did it, and then we talked afterwards. And I post a lot of his stuff. I repost a lot of his work.
He's so good.
He's very, very good. And
Yeah.
I remember he and I had a conversation, and he asked me like, what was my experience? And he was one of the first people I talked to after, once I reintegrated, which was very challenging, by the way. If you hear people mention reintegration, like, that is important. Like, throughout this whole thing we did, I think what's different than just going and doing a bunch of psychedelics is we had energy healing work being done at the same time.
Oh, cool.
Right?
Yes.
And so, you're not just left with like, hey, here's your plant medicine, go have fun and see you later, come back next week or whatever. We really went through like a debrief, and then, what comes up, and then what to expect over the next few months. And, is, as they say, Mother Aya, like, what is she putting in your field of vision? What is she putting in your orbit? And that can be very esoteric. Not a lot of people are into that, and that's fine. But I feel like if you really want to optimize your health and wellness, we've got to understand all of this ancestral stuff, because the plant medicines are very ancestral. Of course we can synthesize and, make synthetic compounds like DMT and things like that from some of these ancient plants. But like you said earlier, like, we are nature. We need to feel into it better. And so I use the plants to be able to do that. And cannabis is a plant just like the other ones are, right? And the dose makes the poison, I guess is the expression. So you can get way too caught up in like the feeling behind what cannabis gives for you. Some people use it to go to sleep. Some people use it for pain. I use it to elevate. I call it elevated, like being elevated instead of being high, right? Because sometimes the high is not what we're aiming for. Sometimes we need to dive through the serpent's mouth. Sometimes we need to go low. And sometimes we need to just push everything out. And that's what cannabis does for me. So I say, I get elevated. And a lot of times I consume in some form or another before each of my podcasts.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm totally sober right now. So I feel like that's been a whole different integration of just finding those spaces where I feel like I need something to help me elevate, or I need, and reaching outside myself. And so I'm like, why? It's again, this chance to ask myself some questions and ask myself better questions around those things. And that's been like a really uncomfortable space for me.
That's the awareness, though.
It is. It's the awareness, and it's been very interesting. And, alcohol, but all psychedelics too, just for a while. And I don't know how long. I don't know. But I thought that seems like something productive to do since I don't really want to do it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so, because I just felt like I had done a lot, and like, why not give myself lots of space to integrate and see what happens? And it's, it's a process. It's a journey. It's just like everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which has been very interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I dig it.
Yeah.
It's like the conversation I was saying about Tessa not quite thinking that EMS was her thing.
Yeah.
She also doesn't think that cannabis is her thing, right? And I have lots of people who know that I really like to talk about cannabis because of what has happened in this country. It's been very much vilified. In fact, I like to respect it. That's why I call it cannabis instead of pot or weed, because for me, it's not that, right? Like when I say pot or weed, or hear someone say pot or weed, I think of it very differently because of how I use it. I have a respect for it, And so there are times though that I think, like right now, I'm just on coffee, right? So, and the moment that I feel like I need to use any kind of compound to elicit a certain response, that's like you, I'm like, no. Let's see. Like I can go plenty of time without coffee. I can go plenty of time without food, right? Like, I do intermittent fasting and I do alternate day fasting, and I've done all these things, but that's diving into the dark side, right? And so, like you said, it is a journey. What comes up from that? That's the question that I'm looking for, because that's mindfulness. That's also searching. We call it interoception, right? Like looking in to figure out what comes up and why.
I love that. Yes, interoception. I've seen that word, but I didn't really even think about looking up what it meant. Yeah. And I like that you clarified that. And it is, and it's powerful, and it's easy to gloss over. It's easy to be like, I'll think about that later.
Right,
I'll just do it today, and I'm just going to pick up my phone now, or whatever it is, or ingest this, or whatever it is, and I'll think about that later. But but allowing yourself the space to do it, like in the moment,
right. I don't know, like, if you were going to get to this or not, but I figured this might be an opportunity to bring this up. But
bring it up.
So we've been recording for how long?
About 50 minutes.
Okay. So we've been recording for about 50 minutes and realized that we have yet to talk about anything around the word fitness.
I know.
Right? But this is
fit. This counts.
Absolutely, right? This is why, and I'm doing all these callbacks now, right? This is why I wanted to gravitate away from fitness expert, right? Because then people expect me to talk about the best way to do a bicep curl or to do a pull up or what's the best routine. And I can offer that for sure. But this journey, like if you work with me and I work with you and we work together, it's going to be far different than, how much is it for a session?
Yeah.
Right?
It's so much bigger than that. And I suspected too at the beginning when you were like, oh, that gets under my skin about, it's done by the half hour or the hour,
right.
With the trainer, because this was my guess of why you said that. And so I want you to say why. But my guess was because it's all encompassing. It's all about that awareness all the time.
Yes.
It's something that is our life, essentially, rather than like, let me check my watch and do this for half an hour.
Bingo.
Okay,
Bingo.
good.
I mean,
good, yeah.
It's spot on.
Which is the whole conversation that we're having, right? Yes.
So for instance, like I say this a lot, so forgive me if I am repeating myself, or anybody that's watching or listening, if you've heard me say this before, but it would be very easy for me to just program a workout routine for you. But I like to take a step back and think, okay, if I came up with, so a long time ago, I came up with this rope idea about like a jump rope that could be more than just a jump rope, right? Something that could be used as a suspension training tool, something that could be used for mobility, stretching, and things like that. And I worked on that for a long time. And over the years, I watched different companies come out with something close to what I came up with. Mm-hmm. But, I didn't have the wherewithal, I didn't have the resources, the connections to be able to get it to come to market. So it's okay, right? Like all ships rise with the tide. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, if someone beat me to it, great, right? That means what I was thinking way back when was relevant, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but here was the thing that I was challenged with. And my manager put this in my head. He goes, Josh, what you do is very, very special. And so what you do with this rope is also very special. But remember, at the end of the day, if you were to just put this rope down somewhere, would people understand what that's to be used for? And without your instruction, without your guidance, it's just another rope, right? Mm-hmm. So that's when I got to this idea of creating content around what I do with the rope. I started doing it with a lot of my clients, and it became this thing. And now, and again, I'm not saying that I created rope flow, but I see what I used to do way back when. Mm-hmm. I see it out there. In fact, I've partnered with a couple of different rope flow companies to help promote what they're doing.
Cool.
And so it's like, if we just prescribe a workout program for someone without this holistic approach around it, then it's just another workout program that you could go. I tell people all the time, you can go to YouTube, you can go search in Google the best way to do a burpee. You don't need to get it from me, but what you're getting from me is way more than just that prescribed exercise or movement. I want to talk to you about why is it that you have orthotics in your shoes? Why is it that you always have your shoes on when you come here? Mm-hmm. Why do you feel like you need to have your arms and legs covered completely? There's so much that can go there. Like, mm-hmm. Emotional security blanket, yeah. Right? Like, why do you feel these emotions when we do this stretch? Why do you tense up when I come to touch you? Right? There's a lot mm-hmm. that comes that we cannot get if I just give you a program.
Well, we're not compartmentalized beings, even if we want to trick ourselves into thinking that we are.
Right. Right.
Even if we want to be like, I'll just get this workout for an hour, there's a lot more going on if we're willing to allow ourselves to recognize that,
right.
Which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
We're not these compartmentalized beings. I mean, you can be if you want to be,
right.
but you're actually not.
Right. Right. And we can say, until we're blue in the face, we can say, because I like to give people the benefit of the doubt that we all innately understand the right thing to do. But life gets in the way. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so if you really want to change, so it goes back to the mantra I was saying earlier. Mm-hmm. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what you do most of the time. And that if is probably, that's what breaks up those two sentences. The if is probably the biggest piece to what I present. It doesn't matter if you don't want to change. If you're happy with where you are, then I would say that maybe you're here because you're curious about what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I can help you with that. But let's not try to fake the funk. Like, let's be real. Let's call the kettle, the kettle black, right? And so if you really just need someone to talk to, or you think I'm attractive, or you just want to be around my energy or whatever, let's call it what it is. Yeah. That way we can get you exactly what you want. But let's not try to masquerade around as thinking that, like, oh, you have a celebrity fitness trainer, right? Air mm-hmm. quotes again. Because I want to do the real work, and I want to work with the people that really want to make change. And this is why I think the prototype client is Roger Waters, mm-hmm. because he's got this discipline and he knows he needs to make change. He's 79 years old.
Yeah.
He's doing a world tour right now, and he's far greater now than he was on the last tour that I worked with him on.
Well, how long ago was that?
It started in 2017, finished 2018. It was like 21 months. Wow. Not back to back, mm-hmm. but it spanned over 21 months world tour. But we've done a lot more work on this one, and the results are amazing, you know? And if I can do everything I can to make sure that he's around long enough to continue, you know, using his platform. He uses his platform in a way, I mean, there's a lot of controversy around what he talks about, but if you really listen to what he's saying, it's like I have the front row seat to like the best humanitarian effort ever, right? And to be a witness of what this man is trying to do to change the world, it's like to be able to help him extend that is like an honor for me.
Yeah.
You know, I learn a lot from it.
What, like, I'm sure you learn a ton. And not only just about like humanity, but I mean, he's been around, you know, for a long time. I think Pink Floyd started mid 60s, right?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got a lot under his belt. And so you see him as better now, like more vibrant, more everything?
All of it.
And so it's not just fitness that you're working with him. It's all the stuff that we've talked about.
Yeah.
It's like the whole holistic thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I secretly, I had hoped, so he did the Rogan show yesterday, Joe Rogan. And of course, you know, this is going to come out. So it doesn't really matter when we say yesterday or today or whatever.
Yeah.
But he did the Joe Rogan show. And I had hoped that something about what he does for his longevity would have come up. It didn't. But that's okay because I'm not in this for the praise of what I do. It's nice to get that, but to see him in his element and to see him thrive is all the sort of accolades I ever need, you know?
It's almost like something he doesn't even have to think about now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like you've made it so, I don't know, you've given it such ease for him that he's able to just live.
Right. And it starts from him. You know, I have to say.
Well, he wanted to do it, and he's willing to
Exactly.
put in the work. I mean, he's a highly successful musician. So,
Right. I mean, I've worked with
Obviously.
lots of high-profile people.
I guess so. You mentioned Madonna, and I don't know your history with a lot of the people that you've worked with. So, if you want to speak to that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I never throw shade on any client because that's just not my nature. But I just think that people come to me when they're ready. And part of the reason why I am doing a lot more podcasts and getting out there a little bit more is because I want to find those people that really want to do the real work.
Yeah.
Right? And so,
Like show up for their whole lives.
yeah. Right. So if Roger were here, or if he, in the future, if he's asked about what his routines are, you know, he's going to mention breath work. He's going to mention barefoot training. He's going to mention gut testing, blood testing, all of the, you know, the blood panels. He's going to mention supplements. I make him a protein shake every day.
What goes in the protein shake?
Oh, so I did a podcast and I talked all about that. I use MSM granules or powder crystals, MSM crystals.
What is MSM?
I forget the name. It's like methyl sulfur methane.
Okay.
And it's basically a sulfur compound, which most of our connective tissue in our body is made up of sulfur.
Okay.
And so it's a really good supplement to add to our bodies to help us with pain and inflammation. And so obviously at 79,
Nice.
we're working out. He's also on tour. You know, sometimes, you know, joints can get arthritic, especially over time, wear and tear. So I add that to make sure that, you know, his connective tissue is healthy.
Okay.
I add in glutamine, the amino acid glutamine, mostly for gut healing and also for recovery from exercise or stress. I add in creatine because when we started on this journey, he used to drink quite a bit, like most rockers do. Or I would say just most people at a certain age. And, you know, if it's been a part of your culture for a long time, then you're going to have a couple glasses of wine. It's like normal. And that's fine. But when we did the blood panel, we saw that there's a number of things that could be improved if we were to take out alcohol. And it's hard to tell someone at that level, stop drinking. So rather than say that, let's severely reduce it and see what happens, right? Let's just do it for 3 weeks. Give us 21 days to kind of see what happens. And in 21 days, there was so many changes that happened that he was able to see in front of his eyes, and I was able to see. And that was simply from doing that. I mean, we also took out refined sugars, which is it should be a no-brainer. But sometimes it's hard to understand where sugar is in most of the things we consume. And we took out gluten for him. And it was just like there was this huge shift. And I don't remember the exact amount of weight, but he lost a lot of weight. And it was to the point where we're like, oh, no, we need to beef you up a little bit, right? Yeah. So that's why I added the creatinine. Also, past the age of 30, 35, for men especially, creatine becomes a cognitive booster as well.
Oh, cool.
Right? So this is another thing that
Just for men?
No, I mean, I think the research obviously is done on white males, right? You know, I mean, this is like the research today is mostly done on that anyway. So I think that's most of the research was done on men, but athletes. But, you know, I'm sure we could find some more research probably on women, but I just remember like after the brain is fully developed, right? Which is usually around 25, right?
Yes.
The frontal lobe, especially, once you get beyond that, then creatine becomes a cognitive boost along with a performance enhancer as well. Cool. And so we use that. I put in sort of grass-fed, grass-finished natural whey protein. And then, I put in LMNT chocolate salt. Okay, the hydration pack. And I mix that all up for him, and that's his shake. And I also give him ketone IQ, the HVMN ketone IQ before every show. Okay. So he takes a nap before the show. I knock on his door to wake him up, and he knows that the blue bottle is coming. Right. I put the HVMN or the ketone IQ in a bottle, a glass bottle for him. And he takes that. That's his shot before he goes on stage. We do a warm up and stretch and things like that. And then the shake is mostly for like a snack or like a post workout recovery tool. He eats a lot of eggs. And I mean, it's like he comes to me to say, hey, I'm going to go to dinner tonight. Either I'm invited to dinner or he's going with someone else, but he'll ask me, what should I have? He'll, send me the menu, or, I'll tell him, hey, we had a really tough, cause he does intermittent fasting as well. And so if we did a tough strength workout, I'll say, hey, carb up tonight, so, get your rice, get your whatever. Otherwise he's fasting, and it's nothing for him to go all day long till dinner before he has a meal. Right. So I can titrate that, and I can kind of triage what's happening because I'm with him constantly. If I'm not with him constantly, it's a little bit harder. And that's where it becomes mundane. I have to ask them, can you do a food log? Can you do this? He's not going to do that. No. But if I can knock on his door, I have a key to his room. If he doesn't answer, I come in, and this goes back to like it not being just about the one workout protocol, right? It's like, do you have the coffee that I want you to have? I set him up so he doesn't have to think about anything, and that's trust as well. So there's a lot to that, but yeah.
I want somebody to do that for me. Just knock on my door and show up with all my nutrients, please. My doctor said a few years ago, it stuck with me. She said one of the first things that to go for people as they age is balance. And so I wanted to just ask you how you feel about balance and seeing someone older.
I'm so happy you brought that up. Okay, because again, it sounds like I'm the king of callback here, but
no, and I feel like I've noticed it with Madonna and watching her. I'm a big Madonna fan, but watching her, she's always been such a solid dancer and the way she moves. But I feel like in the last few years when I've seen her perform, I could tell that her balance wasn't it just didn't seem like it was what it used to be.
Right. I actually just got a message from him. Remember I was telling you.
Oh, yeah. Do you need to take
It's all good.
Okay.
He wanted to go on a gentle stroll by the river.
A gentle stroll. Do you need to do his accent?
Yeah, I wish I could. Balance is one of those things that I was saying that I had an opportunity to edit and to revise the book.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that somehow got missed in this first edition. So anybody who has the book now, right? Like the book that was released.
Yes.
It doesn't have much conversation around balance, and balance is everything of what I do. I mean, I do so much. In fact,
I figured you probably did. I know some flexibility and movement people like Aaron Alexander. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Yeah, of course. And so I've seen Aaron work a lot, and I know there's so much about balance too. So.
Yeah. One of my favorite tools for that, especially on the road, is a slack block by Jim Klopman. And that was one of the things that was missing in the book. It wasn't even in the resources section at the back of the book. And I'm like, oh, this is a huge mistake. And I was really disheartened by the fact that it wasn't in there. And so now this new revision,
put it in.
Yeah, it has it's like a couple paragraphs worth of information around balance. And of course we explain the different tools, but you don't need a tool, right? Like, I like to have, I would have Roger balance on the slack block.
What is a slack block? I don't even know.
It's essentially this I
gotta look it up.
This blue foam material with a velcroed piece of sanded wood on top. And you can do different levels, and it's based on your weight.
Okay, I just looked it up.
It's a really good tool to travel with. But the reason why it was invented by Jim was he also came up with the slack bow, which was around the slack line. You know what a slack line is, right? But you can't. It's hard to travel with a slack line, or if you do travel with just a slack line, it's hard to always find the best place to put it up. But the slack block, you can put that anywhere, and you can do your balance work on it. So we use that for ankle mobility. We use that for confidence, right? Like at 79 years old, a lot of people are fearful of falling because if you break a hip at that age,
for sure,
right? Or break a knee.
That's how much do we hear about that? You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things that balance is hugely important. And, it's the one thing that a lot of times now, if you see Roger, if you happen to be lucky enough to see him during dress rehearsal or anywhere outside of his show, most likely, right? He's barefoot. And, a lot of that comes from the work that we've done together. I have him wear toe spacers sometimes. Before the show, sometimes we're backstage and I just have him simply stand on one leg. We don't have to always use a slack block, but just balance
just
quickly,
do that.
right? Because that's one really good way to get you to practice interoception right there in the moment. Because if you're thinking about anything else, you're nervous or you're anxious about going on stage or whatever, you take this ketone IQ and then you hone in on balancing. Now you get a chance to kind of forget everything else and let's just focus on the task at hand. And right now, that task is, how long can you balance? Can you do at least 30 seconds? On the slack block, the goal is to do 2 minutes without touching down. And it's very hard, right? You'll feel different parts of your body, like your arch, the arch of your foot or your calves or your hips.
Well, I'm just thinking of yoga, and if I'm in certain positions, that involve a lot to balance, you get real tuned into okay, this one muscle in my hip or or the arch of my foot.
So when that comes up, I just say just key in on that and just understand that part is either overworked or underdeveloped. And so we can work on that. And so I'm asking, while he's balancing, what are you feeling right now? Let's not balance joint on joint. Let's not lock the leg out. Let's actually slightly bend the leg so that we can use a muscular system to be able to help with the balance, because that's what's going to help us with our movement.
Yes.
Right? And so,
it's a good opportunity to tune into all the other places you're holding from and move where that is, where that stress you're feeling, move it somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or take it away by holding yourself up in these other spaces, right?
Right.
Your other parts. Oh, good. I'm glad that you talked to that, because ever since my doctor said that, I was like, oh, I need to, keep up with my yoga and things like that. Anything that involves balance.
Right.
I like balance. It's fun.
And just to touch on it quickly, what you mentioned there is I get what the doctor is mentioning by saying, okay, continue with your yoga and this and that. Yoga is just one outlet.
She did mention that. She just said balance, really.
Okay, good.
I said yoga. Mm-hmm.
Right. But because, it's just one outlet, right? I like for people to think a little bit more broad and to have the awareness of everything is a balance tool, right? If you were to try to balance on the side of this sofa, right? Or, I don't know, like if I see rails at a park or, you know, whatever, I just balance on them every once in a while. And I always wear barefoot shoes. I'm a big fan of Vivo Barefoot. And I've been like an ambassador for them for a decade.
Oh yeah,
and,
I don't have any. I've never had barefoot shoes.
Ooh,
I know
we're
I
gonna
need to
get you
get some.
hooked up. We're gonna get you hooked up.
Okay.
But like everything becomes balance, right? Everything becomes movement. Everything becomes what we want it to be. And so just like that rope idea, if there's just a rope and no one knows the options within that rope, right? Like you can think of it as, oh, that's a jump rope because it looks like a jump rope. It functions like a jump rope. But what if you said, if there was a sign there that just said, this is a suspension training tool.
Yeah.
Then that automatically shifted that person's awareness on what that was, right? Like you can take this thermos and say, this is a thermos, right? Which is actually the brand name. This is a, you know, a tumbler or whatever. Or you could say this is also a like a therapy roller, right?
Oh, sure.
And just looking at it, it's like, well, what is it? This goes back to us being childlike, being kids, when we used to look up into the clouds and see that, you know, what shapes do you see there? That's just practicing and flexing that imaginary part of our brain, that childlike, you know, curiosity. This is what I want to bring to the world. I want to continue to make people think, what can you do with this? Instead of what can't you do with this?
Yeah. Or getting locked into certain definitions of anything, even ourselves. And, you know, I thought that whole balance that you were talking about, finding it anywhere on the back of the sofa or whatever, you know, that's a good metaphor for all of life. Like we have an opportunity to find balance or find whatever we're looking for when in front of us, with whatever's presented in front of us.
Right.
And what a blessing you got with this book, having to come back around. And I mean, you know, you got exactly what you wished for. And,
That's right.
and it turned out to be a total blessing because you got to include some things that you knew you needed in there.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, that was good. I mean, at the time, I'm sure you were like, there's no way this is a blessing, but it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it just takes time and perspective every time, but isn't that the truth, right?
Absolutely.
So I feel like we're getting kind of close to time. It's been a little over an hour. So I just want to turn it over to you. And if there's one thing that you came and would like to share today, or anything that we missed, or anything that you want to reiterate as we close.
It's a really good question. There's a lot of things that come up, but one of the things at the forefront of my brain right now is back to what we talked about earlier, is to be able to have compassion with others, but also to have compassion with ourselves, right? And I think we need to be a little bit more understanding about what's going on in our body and why, diving into the difficult parts, right? Allowing certain emotions to come up and understand why. And I also think that we should just be a little bit more open to other people's ideas, other people's thoughts, because you never know. Maybe their mother died and that's why they're cutting you off in traffic. Or maybe there's some kind of trauma that, you know, this person is trying to cover up, or maybe that we are covering up ourselves, trying to bypass, and we're numbing out with certain compounds and psychedelics and whatever. So just have more compassion for others and for ourselves. And also to remain curious and childlike. You know, this is who I am. So if, you know, as you're getting to know me and as people know me, like, I try to have fun. I try to be as youthful as possible because that's what I feel. And I'm not putting on a show. Like, I love to laugh and I love to goof off and I love to, you know, I just love to live, because why not? Right? Like, I'm here to optimize health and wellness for myself and for others. But I'm also here to, like, enjoy life to the fullest, to thrive.
Yeah. You are. We are. Yeah. If we're just willing to open up to that too.
That's right.
You know, and I think I draw cards every day, these little angel cards. And like, I think I got play today or yesterday or something. And I'm like, yes, you know, like if we can just tap back into that. And then it helps back with everything you were talking about with the psilocybin too. It's just about, it's not that big a deal if we can just lighten up a little bit and laugh and have a good time.
Yeah.
We don't have to take it all. So every little minuscule detail doesn't have to be such a source of stress or something like that.
Right.
So, yeah. This has been fabulous. Anything we missed? Anything else you want to add before we go?
I'm sure there is.
Just like the book, you're going to be like, Amy, we got to do an addendum. We got to add an appendix to the podcast.
Exactly.
Well, I'm actually hoping to get this out sooner rather than later, just because of the timeliness of everything and you being here in Austin. So I hope I can. And I would like for you to share, please, and it will all be in the show notes. I know that you have Joshua L. Holland, I believe.
Joshua J.
Joshua J. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was reading it. Joshua J. Holland, and that's how people can find your website.com. And it's also your Instagram handle, correct?
It's Instagram,
Okay.
Facebook, YouTube. It's basically,
Everywhere.
basically
The internet.
everything. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to kind of start that whole
Yes.
capturing of that very
Joshua
early.
J. Holland.
Yeah,
Good.
so you can find it pretty much anywhere. And yeah. I mean, the podcast you mentioned earlier, Simply Walk the Talk.
Yes.
And I would always encourage people to go and watch the video because
It's a great title, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I do a lot of cool things with the show, and I have great guests on, and I would love to have you on one of
I
these
would
days.
love to.
Yeah,
I would
it'd be fun.
absolutely love to.
It'd be
Yes. And you said you do a Pomodoro in there. Are you a big fan of Pomodoro technique? If people don't know what that is, you work for 25 minutes on something. I believe there's a planner that uses the Pomodoro technique that I've used in the past.
Yeah. I mean, if you can already tell, like, I'm not very dogmatic about anything, right? But I like the concept. And what is the concept? I like to break things down to its sort of foundational element, and the idea there is just to take a break from what you're doing, from any kind of sedentary lifestyle for a moment in time. And so I don't get caught up on like, oh, is it
Shit, we should have
25
got
minutes?
up at 25 minutes.
Right. But
It's time for a stretch.
I did think about that, right? But also, this is the reason why I move a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because our bodies want to move.
This is why I have these chairs, because
Yeah.
I'm like, I like to be able to move around a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't like feeling too confined.
Yeah, and I started doing that because, there was this big idea of like, well, you shouldn't sit, so you should stand, right, throughout your day. But then that can get sedentary as well. Like I do most of my podcast standing when I'm at home anyway, and even taking a break from standing for long periods of time is something that is necessary. Or maybe we don't even move for the Pomodoro break, but we get our mind off of the task at hand, which would be like answering questions or talking about something. So
Move your awareness.
yeah, exactly. So it doesn't always have to be physical, but it's like, let's take a break from whatever it is we're doing for that moment, and what can you do? And I've had some of the most interesting Pomodoro requests or submissions from the different guests, and it's fun.
What's one of your favorites?
I think one of my favorites is I did a handstand against the wall in one of the hotels, and my the guest I had on the show, he was a second time guest, and he did a headstand, and he was in Denmark, or I think he's in Denmark, and it's just cool,
awesome.
like to just do something like that, but yeah, and I've had the very basic ones where you just practice breath work, or you just think about something, and that's cool as well. Yeah.
Well, I'll do a headstand right now if you want to. I'm not very good at the handstands except up against a wall. I worked on it during the pandemic, but then I don't know, stopped at some point.
Well, that's what I did too. I did it against the wall, so to be fair.
Oh, well, you look like you could probably rock a handstand or something.
Easy.
Well, thank you so much. I recommend everyone look you up and look for the revised book, which is coming out.
It should be by the time this is out, I'm sure it's going to be out. So
what's the official date?
Like we had it set at October 12th, but I just found out yesterday that we're going to push it a couple days. So it's probably going to be like October 15th or something like that. But
okay, good. I'm actually hoping maybe to shift this and get it out next week. So that would be on time with your book release, which would be really cool. So everybody, I would recommend picking it up. They can order it on Amazon, I take it. I saw on your website too, it said it had a pre-order link.
You can go to Amazon. You can also go to books.joshuajholland.com.
Okay.
And I'll make sure to, update everything there. Or just do a search for the awareness shift. And the revised book is going to have, the word shift is going to be yellow. So that's kind of a difference between the first one and then the second one.
Okay.
And then eventually it's going to be all of the revised book when the other ones run out. But yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I can't wait to get my hands on a copy too. But thank you for sharing everything about it. And I'm grateful for your own awareness shift that's spilling out into the whole world and that we got to talk about it.
Thank you.
So amazing. So thank you so much for being here today. And thank you. Thank everyone for being here today, listening to all this great, insanely good advice that we can apply to our lives to help be our best selves, which you already are right now. So there's the paradox that I'm always talking about. Everything's a paradox. You are your best self right now, but keep working at getting better. I know. So thank you for being here again. I'm so grateful. Please rate, review, subscribe to the show, all the things. And of course, check out Josh's podcast too, Simply Walk the Talk. I can't wait to check that out. So thank you so much, everyone. Sign up for my newsletter. It's at amyedwards.com. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah. This has been the Amy Edwards Show from Overcome Studios. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And thank you so much for being here. Sign up for our newsletter at amyedwards.com.